Good afternoon and welcome to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles and I am your host here in Harlingen, Texas in the Rio Grande Valley of South Texas. In just a moment, I'm going to bring in our South Texas correspondent, Sandra Sanchez. She's got a whole host of information of something that just hit the Federal Register today when it comes to visas and the visa program. But first, we're going to run through some of the headlines making news across the border. Starting in Yuma, Arizona, the military has designated a new national defense area in Yuma. That's the fourth now along the U.S.-Mexico border. We've been talking about the one that we've had here in the Rio Grande Valley for some time now. Now, the Yuma National Defense Area is part of Joint Task Force Southern Border and will span about 32 miles, according to a news release from U.S. Northern Command. These photos are courtesy of U.S. Northcom. It's located next to the vast Barry M. Goldwater Complex. It's a training range for fighter pilots and will be an extension of Marine Corps Air Station Yuma. Service members will be responsible for patrolling the temporary detention of unauthorized personnel, maintenance, construction, and upgrading the existing and planned border barrier. Since April, the Defense Department has established 3 other national defense areas in New Mexico, El Paso, and again, the one that we've been talking about a lot here in the Rio Grande Valley in South Texas. Also making news today, Texas Appeals Court this week has denied Attorney General, that's Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton's office's request to question a nun who leads Catholic Charities of the Rio Grande Valley, one of the state's largest migrant aid organizations. Now, the Texas Tribune is reporting that in a 2-1 ruling issued Monday, the 3-judge panel of the 15th Court of Appeals reaffirmed a lower court's ruling from last year. The ruling said the Attorney General's office, in which the Attorney General's office had the burden of proof to demonstrate that the benefits of forcing a pre-suit deposition outweigh the burdens to Catholic Charities. The case is one of several in which Paxton's office has targeted groups that work with migrants across the state. Now, these probes into Catholic Charities of the Rio Grande Valley began after Governor Greg Abbott in December of 2022 directed Paxton's office to investigate, quote, the role of non-governmental organizations may have in planning and assisting illegal border crossings into Texas, end quote. Also making news today, the U.S. government is making policy changes to implement stricter green card rules for married couples. Now, these changes became effective officially on Friday, and the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services Department says they are designed to curb potential fraud. The new requirements include documentation requirements like joint bank accounts, credit cards, and utility bills, photographs of the couple together over time, plus sworn statements from family and friends confirming the relationship. There will also be in-person mandatory interviews. And speaking of things changing when it comes to immigration, Sandra Sanchez, our South Texas correspondent, joining us today. Sandra, you always keep an eye on documents that could affect immigration coming from the feds. Something dropped into the Federal Register today. Fill us in.
Rudy. Thanks for having me. Yeah, actually, today they started what's called a visa bond pilot program. There was this announcement. This is going to be for only 1 year. And basically, they could charge visa applicants who try to come on a business visa or a tourist visa up to $15,000 per person for that visa. There are, I know you must have a lot of questions. There are 3 different types of categories they could charge: $5,000, $10,000, or $15,000. And the biggest question is people from which countries, and they have not specified that. But right before we went on air, I did speak to someone from the Mexican consul, and they have not been informed by the Mexican embassy if Mexico is one of those countries. The State Department and the Department of Homeland Security says that they are going to use this pilot program to target 2,000 people who try to come in the next year. And from countries that have high overstay rates, that's one of the reasons we reached out to Mexico, because that is one of the countries with the high overstay rates. But it's not clear exactly the list of countries. But what they're saying is that it's going to be countries with a high overstay rate and where screening and vetting is deemed to be deficient, and where citizenship by investment is offered, meaning you can become a citizen of that country and no residency is required. Some of those countries, that includes Austria, Dominican Republic, Jordan, Egypt, Turkey, Macedonia. So those are potential countries that could be on the list, as well as Mexico, which has actually, according to a fiscal year 2023 study, had a had a very high overstay rate, but Chad had the highest rate.
Now, I want to ask, do you by chance know, you said 5, 10, and 15,000 per applicant bond amounts. Do you know what like a typical price is, or is this, something, it's an addition to what what they're already having to pay?
No, this is in addition, and this is a bond, and it will be administered by the visa authority that's giving out the visa. So typically the consulate, the embassy, and it will be held there. Now, whether when you're arrested and you get a bondsman, right, are there going to be people in the business like that for these kinds of bonds? I don't know. Is this going to start a whole new industry? It's a question that I have asked so many people today. This is a new program, so it's never been implemented before. So there are a lot of questions about it. But what we do know is once you put down the bond, you have 30 days to, once the visa is issued, 30 days to enter the country. And if you don't enter the country, or if CBP stops you at a port of entry for whatever reason, Customs and Border Protection does not admit you into the United States, they're saying that they will refund the bond. And if you leave before your visa's up, so people typically get about a year to come and conduct their business, and tourist visas are typically a 6-month visa, and you leave before that expiration, you will get this bond refunded to you. How that's going to happen, I don't know.
So it's almost like a deposit to come into the country.
Yeah, it is.
So one of the reasons for this pilot program is, a lot of overstayed visas. Do we know, which countries have the highest rates? You said Mexico had a pretty high rate, but what other countries, how many people are kind of overstaying these visas on an annual basis?
Yeah, so the last numbers that we have are from the Department of Homeland Security fiscal year 2023. It's called an entry-exit overstay report. There were 39 million departures expected that year, but over 565,000 people overstayed. That is actually only 1.45%. But some countries have much higher overstay rates. If you see here, Haiti had almost 27,000 overstays, and that's 31% of all the visas that were issued. Venezuela had over 21,000, 31% of the visas. Dominican Republic, they're popping up again. We talked about them earlier, so it's very likely that this is one country that will be considered on the list because they had nearly 20,000 overstays. Brazil, but you can see where almost 20,000 people overstayed their visa from Brazil, but that's only 1.5% of the visas issued because a lot of people come here to visit from Brazil and they don't overstay. There are some countries, Haiti, Venezuela, Dominican Republic, we keep hearing that on the border from CBP officers. Those are some of the big countries. So we kind of believe that they will make the list.
Well, I was going to say, I'm not sure if I might be mistaken, but I remember that President Biden had kind of extended some humanitarian programs to, I think it was Haiti was on that list.
Temporary protected status.
Are a lot of those overstays potentially, those folks that got here on temporary protected status and are kind of hoping to stay longer?
Well, TPS has been revoked. It's still, there's been a lot of court action with that, but the program itself has been taken back by the Trump administration. First trough of those in the TPS program have been told they have to leave, and the second trough is coming up pretty soon. So those are not considered part of this. Yeah.
Yeah. If going back to the payment part, if someone pays for their visa, they pay this bond, are they expected, like I paid everything and my paperwork's all clear, I have to be in within, a certain amount of time? Is it 24 hours, 36 hours, anything like that?
Yeah. Within 3 months from the date of the visa's issued, they have to come to the United States. And if they don't, then they have to start the whole process over again.
Do you know how typical it is for someone to maybe apply for, like, let's say a tourist visa, and they wait, a long time before they actually use it? Or is it something that people kind of reapply for to come over and kind of keep recurring real applications, I guess.
Right. And I think that might be part of the point of this, is that you need to specifically have your dates in order, and you need to say, this is the reason I'm coming. And also, you may be targeted if you aren't specific, right? If if you're a business person, you want to attend this convention, you want to go meet with this business person over this potential investment that you have, you have this document, this data, you tell the officers, this is why I'd like to come. You likely will not be targeted. You likely will get your visa and everything will be fine. I think if you are a bit suspicious and a bit of, kind of loose. Now, there are some people that, have, they're independently wealthy and they can just travel the world on a whim, and they may just not necessarily have that firm plans in hand, and they might get stopped for some questions, and they might be one of the 2,000 that are going to be targeted for this program.
Now, let's say, I pay this money, my visa expires today, and I have until midnight to get out of the country. When I wake up tomorrow morning, if I'm still in the United States, that money is gone, correct?
It is gone. And what will happen is the State Department or the embassy will notify the consulate, and then the Department of Homeland Security will be notified, and that they will ultimately be the ones that issue whatever a penalty, the document that causes the forfeiture of that bond. And now the question becomes, where does this money wait in the interim?
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know. I mean, the consulates are to collect it, right? The visa issuers are to collect it. But what we do know is no interest will be given on these bonds. So if you have a $15,000 bond and you were in the country for a year, you are not getting any interest on that bond.
Now, is the federal government expecting to, they're going to collect these bonds? Are they actually expecting to make any money off this program?
Well, if you consider 2,000 people, and if you say the average is $10,000, it could be $20 million, which could, offset a little bit, not a lot, if you consider the ICE agents, as we recently talked about, are getting $50,000 bonuses for signing on, and $46 billion to build the border wall. We have a lot of border-related expenses, a lot of security expenses. So this might be one way that the Trump administration is trying to get some of these funds back. And let me just tell you that this isn't the first time the Trump administration wanted to do this. They actually had this on the books in 2019. The COVID pandemic hit, and they didn't implement it because, the border was shut down and visas weren't allowed, and, to stop the pandemic.
Yeah, at that point, they had no need for it.
So they pretty much already had the blueprint to do this, and so they are implementing it, and today's the day they announced it.
Well, we got a lot more questions regarding this. I know you've been watching it for a while, so stay with us. Border Report Live will be back to continue this conversation in 1 minute. And welcome back to Border Report Live on this Tuesday afternoon. My name is Rudy Mideles, and I'm your host here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of South Texas. Joining me right now is our South Texas correspondent, Sandra Sanchez. Sandra, we're talking about this new bond program. Kind of, for those folks just joining us right now, can you kind of backtrack and fill us in on what's going on?
Yeah, a visa bond pilot program. They're going to choose 2,000 people who apply for visas to come to the United States, either for tourism or for business over the next year. And they could have to pay either $5,000, $10,000, or a $15,000 bond for that visa. The bond will be held. It's almost like it won't be the money won't be spent, but the bond will be held. And if they do leave the country on time, they will get that money back.
Now, I know a lot of folks are probably curious about this as far as, what different groups are saying about this. Have you heard or spoken to any different organizations that maybe support people coming over the border into the United States about what this could mean?
Yeah, some groups are upset over this. The Council on American Islamic Relations say it's the largest Muslim civil rights organization in the country, and they called it today, quote, a legalized shakedown. They say it's a wealth test and a form of extortion that targets poorer nations. We mentioned earlier Dominican Republic. We mentioned there, we don't know exactly the list of countries, but we do know some countries where there are lot of visa overstays, and those are the ones that are going to be targeted. Haiti, Venezuela, Dominican Republic, very likely on the list. And they're saying that this penalizes lawful travelers and it will stigmatize entire communities. The government affairs director for this organization said, quote, "This is not about national security. It's about weaponizing immigration policy to extort vulnerable visitors, punish disfavored countries, and turn America's welcome mat into a paywall." Now, they're also saying that there will be no accountability for it. And that is a good question. You know, we called the Mexican embassy, we called the consulate, we asked, how will you collect these bonds? How will you hold these bonds? And they told me, we have a lot of those same questions. We haven't been informed by our embassy if we're even on the list, but we don't know how this will be administered. And I think there will be a lot of questions. Will there be proper oversight that these bonds just don't disappear?
And one thing I wanted to ask you is there, we don't know who's on the list yet, and we know that they want to target these countries where they have a lot of overstays from originally. Is there any kind of matrix or criteria that they're using or that they've notified in the Federal Register about what they're going to do to pick these countries that they put on the list?
Yeah, well, okay, so it's also countries that allow citizenship where you don't necessarily have to live there,
right? Yeah,
right? And where the screening is questionable. But so one of the things is that it'll be at the discretion of the consulate, and it will be depending on a person's personal circumstances, the reason for traveling, their employment, their income skills, and their education. So like I said, if a business person has a well thought out conference that they want to attend or business meeting that they have, and they have specific dates, and they can say, I'm staying at this hotel, I'm going to this conference, you know, likely they won't be targeted. But if somebody is just saying, oh, I just want to come and I'm not sure LA, New York, where I'm going to be, they may be put in this pilot program and have to fork up some money.
Now, when you say consulate, you mean these so like the Mexican consulate in
where they go to apply for their visas.
Okay. So I guess my one question I also have is these bonds, it's going to, like you said, it's going to be handled at the consulate level. So again, we don't know if that money is going to like physically stay there. These checks are going to physically stay there, whatever it may be, or, you know, is it going to go back to Washington? Do we have any idea?
Yeah, we don't know. But in this Federal Register, the document does list the State Department, the Department of Treasury is involved, and the Department of Homeland Security. So obviously the Department of Treasury to track the money, the State Department to track the visas, and then the Department of Homeland Security to track those who overstay their visas. They will be alerted, and they will be the ones that will ultimately issue the penalty notice, which means revocation of the bond that they put up.
You know, for those of us who aren't really familiar with the visa process, do you know typically about how long it takes? Let's say I want to get a visa from Mexico into the United States. Do you know about how long that takes?
Well, it depends on what country you're applying to, and and there can be some minimal costs to those countries as well. You know, it depends. Like if you want to go to Brazil, it can take a few days. If you want to go to Mexico, you typically can get the visa on the spot. But, you know, it depends what country you're applying to. And so I think part of this is somebody from Sudan, which is one of the countries that I have seen on the list, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has named as questionable at times, wants to come to the United States, whether, you know, they vet their people properly or not. And if they don't feel that they do, they could make this process a lot harder for them. I think the Trump administration, bottom line, is they want to make sure that only people coming into the country should be in the country and that they should leave when they say they're going to leave. And, you know, as we know, the Trump administration has said that they don't want people here who do not have legal documents.
So basically, if someone wanted to apply for a visa to come to the United States, you know, it's really, even with this program, it's going to be truly a case-by-case basis then.
It is. And we have no idea. I mean, we talked about there were 39 million people who were supposed to leave in fiscal year 2023. So that's a huge number of people coming in and coming out, and only 2,000 will be selected. So hopefully you're not one of that unlucky lottery and you have to fork up these kind of funds.
And do they think that maybe this program will deter folks from trying to come into the country?
I do think that they believe that, especially, we saw Venezuela on the list during the Biden administration. There were hundreds, actually thousands of people per day here in the Rio Grande Valley and Brownsville who were coming over. The majority, we were told, from Venezuela. And of course, our country didn't have the ability to return them to Venezuela. And so, they're saying you cannot come in, you cannot be granted a visa to be in the United States. Temporary protected status is ending for countries from Haiti, Venezuela that were part of this before. So, they're really shutting the door on the people who are coming here and they say don't have a lawful reason for being here.
I think it'll definitely be interesting too to see if this, kind of takes the weight off of some ICE agents, the enforcement removal operations.
Yeah.
Is this, are they hoping that this will take some of that off their plate?
Yeah, obviously we know that they have about almost 60,000 people in ICE detention right now, but only 41,000 beds nationwide. So we're already relying on local law enforcement agencies to house these people. And so, they're trying to build new facilities, Alcatraz, you've heard about, right? But they don't want more people coming in that shouldn't be in here.
All right. Well, it'll definitely be interesting to see how this all plays out. There's still a lot of questions that a lot of folks higher than us in the food chain when it comes to all this immigration stuff I'm sure need answers to as well.
And as soon as I know the list of countries, I will let you know.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this, Sandra. Sandra Sanchez, our South Texas correspondent, joining us today. Stay with us. When we come back, we're going to take a look at a few more headlines making news, not just across the border, but across the country. Stay with us. Border Report Live is back in 1 minute. And welcome back to this Tuesday edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mideles, and I'm your host here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of South Texas. I have a few headlines to tell you about this afternoon, starting with the Texas Democrats have prevented the state's House of Representatives from establishing a quorum of lawmakers required to do business. Here's a look at some of the video from up at the Texas Capitol, courtesy of our partners up at KXAN in Austin. Now, at least for now, with a redrawn congressional map sought by President Donald Trump, the Republican-led House was unable to establish the quorum of lawmakers required to do business. Texas Governor Abbott has made threats about removing members who are absent from their seats. Democrats counter that the governor is using smoke and mirrors to assert legal authority that he does not have. The House quickly issued civil arrest warrants for absent Democrats, and Governor Abbott ordered state troopers to help find and arrest them, but lawmakers physically outside of Texas are beyond the jurisdiction of state authorities. And we do have another one. Border crossings are dropping at ports of entry across the country. Many are blaming the ICE raids for the decline. Here's Jorge Vela with his reporting.
La pandemia también, ¿verdad? Pero
The pandemic too, but we know that was because of disease. So it was fine for people to take care. But what's happening now with the ICE raids is worse. A lot of people are afraid.
Andrea Salas says sales at her business are down 50%, a drop she attributes to fewer customers from Tamaulipas and Nuevo León, as well as fewer locals. She believes this is all due to immigration fears. She's still open, but says many around her have not been so lucky.
Bastante, de hecho.
A lot. In fact, many people from Monterrey come here to see me. A lot of people from Reynosa, Matamoros, and from here along the border. It has really gone down a lot, even from the local people here, and I am not the only one.
And the numbers back it up. There's been a 13% drop in crossings at the Ansalduas Bridge and a 23% drop in vehicle crossings from Mexico at the McAllen Hidalgo Bridge.
Las ventas han bajado. Sales have dropped by 75% because, well, people are afraid. Wholesale customers who've been coming to the store for 10, 15, even 20 years are still coming now. But they come with fear because they've been told that the visa is for tourism and not for buying or doing business.
Zavala says fears of ICE raids and military inspections on the Mexican side are keeping customers away, and it's forcing businesses like his to cut hours.
Se les bajaron horas a los trabajadores. Workers had their hours reduced because the system isn't there and there's no longer the flow there used to be. We try to keep the employees working, but with fewer hours.
The city of McAllen says they're aware of the impact. Assistant City Manager Juan Olaguive says military inspections in Mexico are creating long lines that discourage traffic, as pedestrian crossers in the McAllen Hidalgo Bridge are up by 18%.
We are having Mexican military doing 100% inspections, so they're making lines longer. And so as a shopper or as someone who wants to come across, that's the challenge that they're having.
All right, that was Jorge Vela reporting in McAllen, Texas. Now, city leaders also spoke with Jorge about what's going on, and they say that they are working with officials to find a more efficient system for border crossings. And really quick, before we go, we did want to tell you about our partners over at Political Power Ranker. Nextstar's Director of Political Content, Chris Berg, along with Spencer Kimball from Emerson Polling. Every week they talk about who's up and who's down in the world of politics based on one of my favorite things, data. You can find out this week they're actually talking about the North Carolina 2028 Senate race with Raleigh's own Russ Bowen, so check it out at abc24.com. That's going to do it for us from South Texas. For Sandra Sanchez, I'm Rudy Mireles. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see y'all tomorrow.